Everyone, my name is Victor Rivera and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be working on a 2005 Honda Pilot. Customer states brake pedal goes all the way to the ground and the brake light is on. Let's take a look at it. The rotor has discoloration. So now we're going to remove the caliper bolts, which are 14mm bolts. So we're going to loosen them up, loose both of them up first, and then we'll remove them. We'll remove the caliper. This one's a little stuck, so we'll use a screwdriver to get it out. By looking at the caliper, we noticed that the inside pad is completely missing here. So these brakes wore out completely where the pad completely disintegrated and destroyed the rotor. On the caliper itself, you can see that the piston was actually stopping the brake rotor. We're going to remove the caliper bracket. It's a 17mm bolts. There's two of them. You might want to use something big for more leverage to break them loose. Make sure you loosen both of them first. Now you can remove them. Bolts. We're just going to remove the caliper bracket. Now we're going to remove the rotor. Normally they would have two screws holding the rotor onto the hub, but whoever did this brakes before, they drilled it out and never replaced them. So we're going to strike it. We're going to strike it right here so it can cause a vibration against the hub so it can loosen up, or you can hit it from the back. Just be careful not to hit anything else. Okay, so after a couple of hard strikes, we loosen it up. It's going to remove the rotor. All right. So here's the rotor, the inside of the rotor. You can see it's all gouged and eaten up by the brake pad. This side is smooth. So we're going to replace the rotors. We're going to clean up the hub. We still have parts of the old screws on here on the hub, so we're going to remove them, drill them out, smooth it all up, put new rotor on, and then we'll finish up the brakes on this side. We have the new rotor, here we have the old rotor, and what I like to do is compare the rotors just to make sure we are getting the right rotor. Two ways to compare the rotors is when they're laid down, the height. As you can see, they're pretty much the same, and I also like to stand them next to each other to make sure they're equal in this way too. So these are the right rotors. Just in case, we do this just in case we get the wrong one and we only find out after we install it in the car. So now we're going to put it in the car. Here we have our new caliper with our new caliper bracket. It comes all in one unit, so we need to separate it to install the hardware. Battery's a little dead on that gun. Okay, we're going to put the caliper itself to the side, and we're going to prepare the caliper bracket. Okay, so here's the hardware. So what we're going to do, we're going to place it. This is where the brake pads rest. So we're going to pop them right in place. Make sure it's seated properly so it doesn't get in the way, or else the pads will not fit or it will not hit the rotor. Okay, so we have it in place. We want to make sure that the pins, these slide pins, this one's a little tough. Slide in and out. The brackets, the hardware is in place. The slide pins are free. These slide pins have to be free because they're floating calipers, and they have to be able to slide side to side every time you're braking. If they're frozen, the caliper does not operate properly, and then you'll have sticking brakes or brake pull. So what we're going to do is we're going to lube the mating surfaces of the brake pads and the caliper bracket. So this is where the brake pads rest, so we're just going to lightly lube it. The pads will move freely in here and also prevents any possible noise. We're using brake and caliper grease, or you could use a silicone grease. Now we have the pads. We want to make sure there's two types of pads. One with the wear sensor, one without. Usually I like to put the wear sensor on the inside of the rotor because the inside pad tends to wear a lot faster than the outside. So we're going to install the pad. Now you can put it on the bracket now and install the brake pads with the bracket, or you could install the bracket on first and then put the pads in. I like to try this first. If the pads move a lot, then I'll do it the other way. So the brake pads are on the bracket. Again, you could do this now, or you could do it in the car. We got the new rotor in. Now we're gonna install the caliper bracket with the pads. We're gonna put both bolts on. Get them in it by hand as much as possible. Then we'll tighten it up with the ratchets. Remember, these are 17mm bolts. Make sure you put them nice and tight. I like to put a little grease on the outside of the brake pad. What this does is prevent any possible noise when the caliper meets the brake pads. So we're gonna put just a little bit. We don't want to be real sloppy with it. This is, again, not a necessity, but it's just a preventive for any noise, possible noise. So now with the caliper, here's the new caliper, here's the old caliper. You can transfer the line before you install the caliper, but I like to install the caliper and then put the line on afterwards so it's stable. We're going to start both bolts. Now we're going to tighten it. Make sure they're nice and tight. All right, we're good. So now we just have to transfer the line from the old caliper to the new caliper. You can use a wrench. This is a 14mm bolt. You can use a wrench. I'm just going to use a gun and zip it off. Okay, the caliper came with a new bolt and washers. So we're going to put one washer on the bolt on one side. We'll remove the old one. Okay, just make sure there's no debris. I'll put the line. Now you have a washer on both sides. And we'll screw it on. Tighten it up. Actually, the new bolt is a 12mm. This vehicle, we replace both front calipers. Anytime you open up the hydraulic system, we have to make sure that we bleed the air so we get a nice strong brake pedal. So the first thing we're going to do before we bleed the brake system is to make sure that our master cylinder is full of brake fluid. I just fill this one up. It's all the way to the top. We use .3 brake fluid, whatever brand, doesn't matter as long as it's .3. And we're going to put the cap back on. So we're going to do a manual bleeding procedure. Basically, someone's in the car and he's going to pump the brake as I tell him to, and he'll hold the brake when I tell him to, and then we'll force the air out of the wheels. Normally when you brake, you want to start with the farthest wheel from the master cylinder. The master cylinder is here, so we want to make sure that we start bleeding on the right rear wheel, the passenger side rear. Then we're going to go to the left rear, then we'll go to the passenger side front tire, and then we'll finish off with the driver's front tire. So let's begin. The right rear caliper, and this is the first caliper that we're going to bleed because it's the farthest away from the master cylinder. So every brake caliper has a bleeder screw. On this one here, it's right here. There's a hole on the front of it, so when we open it up, brake fluid will shoot out of it. So what we're trying to look for is a steady stream of brake fluid. If there's any air coming out, there is there's still air in the brake system, which will create a spongy brake pedal, which we don't want. So we're gonna have somebody, my assistant inside the car, pumping the brake and then holding the brake when I tell him to, so we can bleed out the caliper. All right, pump it. So he's inside pumping it about 3, 4, 5 times. Hold it down. Hold it down. So he's holding the brake pedal down. So if I open this up while he's holding the brake pedal down, brake fluid's going to shoot out. So we're going to have to keep an eye out on the stream. Okay, we have a steady stream coming out. Then we're going to close it. We're going to do this a couple of times just to make sure. Pump it. You have to make sure that the bladed screw is closed when he starts pumping, or else we'll allow more air to go back into the system. Hold it down. Okay, he's holding it down, and we're going to keep an eye on the stream. Okay, it's a solid stream, no air bubbles, so this wheel is completely done. Okay, we'll just tighten it up. Remember, some of these bleeder screws have a rubber cap on them. So you would have to remove the rubber cap first before you did this process. So now we're gonna move to the left rear wheel and do the same thing. Now we're doing the left rear wheel, and this bleeder screw has the rubber cap. So what we're gonna do is just remove it with our fingers. Sometimes you might need pliers to remove it. Okay, so we're gonna do the same process here. Pump the brake. So again, we have somebody inside pumping the brake. He's gonna pump it a couple times. We see the caliper tightening, letting loose, tightening. Okay, hold it down. He's gonna hold the brake pedal down, and we're gonna keep an eye on the stream to make sure there's no bubbles. Okay. No stream, so we're gonna tighten it back up and have him pump again. Pump it up. Okay, we're gonna have him hold it down again. Hold it down. All right, he's holding the brake pedal down. We're gonna check it one more time. If it's a steady stream, we'll move on to the next wheel. Steady stream. This wheel is complete. We'll move on to the next one. If it had a cap, please reinstall it. Now we're gonna bleed the passenger side front tire. This one here, we replaced the caliper. It's a brand new caliper, so there's a lot of air in here. We want to make sure that there's no air. We've had them pumping for a while, so I did give it a preliminary bleed just to get a lot of the air out. So let's go back and make sure there's no air. Pump it. Hold it down. We're going to crack it loose. Okay, that was a steady stream. We're going to close it, have him pump it again. Pump it. Sometimes you are going to have to do this 3, 4, 5 times, and it won't hurt to go a second time around the car. Always make sure that the brake fluid level is full and that the master cylinder does not run dry, or else you're going to create yourself more headaches, and then you're going to have to really bleed it more than one time. Hold it down. Okay, now we're going to tighten it. It looks good. All right, pump it. So this side here is completely done. Now we're going to go to the last one, which is left front wheel. Final wheel, which is the left front wheel, the driver's side front wheel. And we are going to bleed this one, and then we should be done. Pump the brake. Okay. Hold the brake down. Let's open it up. Okay. That was a nice steady flow. We close it, tighten it, pump it again. Hold it down. Okay, we're going to tighten it. And for good luck, we're going to do it one more time. Pump it. Make sure you go all the way down. All right, hold it. Okay, last time. Okay, we got a nice stream, no air bubbles. So we are good. Okay. Guys, now after we finish bleeding all the brakes, all the calipers, we want to make sure that we top off the brake fluid to the max line, and we're all done. And then we'll put the wheels back on and test drive it. Make sure you do not get brake fluid on the paint, as it is very harmful to the paint. Okay, we are at the max level. We are going to put the cap back on, tighten it, and we're completely done with the brake pedal. Next is put the wheels on and test drive it and make sure everything is good.